China is ramping up construction on a new military base in the South China Sea. Work is advancing on Antelope Reef, part of the Paracel Islands in the region.
Five months ago, this spot in the ocean was almost nothing. Just a ring of coral and a couple of tiny buildings sitting on a sandbar. You could have sailed right past it and never noticed. Today, it is one of the biggest man-made islands in the entire South China Sea. Between October 2025 and March 2026, China pumped enough sand out of the sea to create nearly 490 acres of brand new land at a place called Antelope Reef. That is almost the same size as Mischief Reef, China's largest military base in these waters, which took years to build. China did this one in about 5 months. This is the biggest island China has built in the South China Sea since 2017. And it sits just 216 nautical miles from the coast of Vietnam. So what is China really building out here? Why now? And why should you sitting anywhere in the world actually care? Let's break it down. Let's start with the facts, because they are genuinely stunning. Antelope Reef sits in the Paracel Islands in the northern part of the South China Sea. Vietnam calls it Da Hai Sam. For years, it was one of China's smallest outposts in the area. The Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, a research group at the Washington think tank CSIS that tracks these islands using satellites, described the old Antelope Reef as little more than a sandbar. Then, in October 2025, the dredgers showed up. Dredgers are giant ships that suck up sand and crushed coral from the seabed and dump it on top of a reef to build dry land. China used dozens of them. By December 31st, 2025, satellite photos showed the work was just beginning. By February 2026, real structures were rising. By March, the new land measured roughly 1,490 acres, about 6 square kilometers. To put that in perspective, Woody Island, which has been China's main base in the Paracels for years and even hosts a small city, is only about 890 acres. Antelope Reef blew past it in months. It is now nearly the size of Mischief Reef, which measures 1,504 acres and is the largest Chinese outpost in the whole South China Sea. China built in 5 months what used to take years. That speed alone is the warning sign. And AMTI says this is just the start. The new island is big enough to hold a 9,000-foot runway, long enough for fighter jets and heavy military aircraft. The same report warns it could eventually carry diesel power plants, underground storage, coastal defense guns, surface-to-air and anti-ship missiles, plus radar and electronic warfare systems. In other words, this is not a fishing village. It is the foundation of a military base. Here is where it gets interesting. China did not pick this location by accident. Antelope Reef sits about 162 nautical miles from Sanya, China's big naval base on Hainan Island. But it also sits just 216 nautical miles from Da Nang, on the coast of Vietnam. That is closer to Vietnam than many of China's other outposts. AMTI says the new base would extend China's reach much closer to Vietnam's coastline and give it more room for air and naval forces in the northern South China Sea. Now look at the timing. In early 2026, the world's attention was locked on the Middle East. The United States was deep in a war with Iran, with carrier groups and aircraft pulled toward the Persian Gulf. According to one tracking group, U.S. reconnaissance flights over the South China Sea actually dropped, from about 102 flights between December and January down to just 72 in February 2026. Hook. While the world watched Iran, China quietly poured an island into the sea. Asia Times put it bluntly, reporting that China appears to have used the moment, with America distracted by a two-front problem, to scale up construction at Antelope Reef. When the biggest player looks away, the building speeds up. That is the pattern. This is the first significant artificial island building Beijing has undertaken in the South China Sea since 2017. That 2017 detail matters. After building more than 3,200 acres of land in the Spratly Islands between 2013 and 2016, what critics nicknamed the Great Wall of Sand, China mostly paused. Now, nearly a decade later, the dredgers are back. And the Great Wall of Sand is growing again. Vietnam noticed immediately. And Hanoi is not staying quiet. In March 2026, Vietnam's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Pham Thu Hong issued a sharp public protest. Vietnam claims the Paracel Islands too, and she made the position crystal clear. Any foreign activities conducted without Vietnam's permission are completely illegal and invalid. Vietnam resolutely opposes such activities.
Vietnam lays claim to the entire Paracel Island group under its extended exclusive economic zone.
But here is the part most people miss. Vietnam is not just protesting with words, it is building islands too, and fast. Since 2022, Vietnam has been on its own massive reclamation drive in the Spratly Islands, further south. According to CSIS, Vietnam has expanded work across all 21 of the features it controls. As of March 2025, Vietnam had created about 70% as much new land as China had in the Spratlys. Analysts now say Vietnam is on track to match, and maybe even pass, China's total island building in that area. Vietnam is even building a 10,000-foot airstrip on one of its reefs, Barky Canada Reef. And in a twist that shows how tangled this all is, China has actually protested Vietnam's building, calling it construction on illegally occupied islands. Both sides accuse each other of the exact same thing. When everyone starts building islands at once, the sea itself becomes a chessboard. One Chatham House expert warned that this could open what she called a Pandora's box of competitive island building across the South China Sea, where, if no one defends the rules, every country just starts dredging. That box may already be open. Vietnam is not the only neighbor reacting. The Philippines is moving as well. As of May 2026, satellite imagery confirms the Philippines is extending a runway on Thitu Island, which Filipinos call Pag-asa, its most important outpost in the Spratlys. The roughly 200-meter extension is being built over an area that used to be underwater. Manila is also spending more than 1 billion pesos, about 27 million US dollars, to build a new, deeper port on nearby Nanshan Island. The current port is too shallow and its entrance too narrow for bigger ships. A better port means Philippine Coast Guard and Navy vessels can resupply their outposts more easily and stay in the area longer. And behind the Philippines stands the United States. Washington now has access to 9 military bases across the Philippines. During the Balikatan 2026 exercises, about 17,000 troops trained together. That gives the US far more flexibility near both Taiwan and the South China Sea. 3 countries, 1 sea, everyone digging in at the same time. So now you have the full picture forming. China builds a giant island near Vietnam. Vietnam builds across 21 of its own reefs. The Philippines extends runways and ports with American backing. Every move triggers the next. This is what an arms race looks like, except it is being fought with sand, concrete, and dredging ships before a single shot is fired. Okay, islands in a faraway sea. Why should anyone outside Asia care? 3 solid reasons. First, the money. The South China Sea is one of the busiest trade routes on Earth. Around 1/3 of all global shipping passes through it. Trillions of dollars in goods every single year. The phone in your hand, the car in your driveway, the clothes you are wearing, a huge share of all of it cross this water. If these tensions ever turn into a real blockade or conflict, global prices and supply chains take an instant hit. Everywhere. Second, the military reality. China now runs an estimated 27 outposts in the South China Sea with somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 troops stationed across them. These bases carry fighter aircraft, missile systems, and radar that can watch and threaten huge stretches of ocean. Antelope Reef adds one more powerful node to that network, and a 9,000-foot runway pointed toward Vietnam and the northern sea lanes. Third, the Taiwan connection. Many analysts believe the real purpose of bases like Antelope Reef is not just to control fishing waters. It is to make it harder and more dangerous for the United States to operate here in a future crisis, especially a fight over Taiwan. Every new runway and radar station pushes American forces a little further back and raises the cost of stepping in. This is not a local fight over rocks. It is a global story about who controls the future of the Pacific. China says all of this is defensive, that these are its waters and its right. Its neighbors see it very differently, as steady, year-by-year expansion that swallows the sea one island at a time. Both sides cannot be right. And that gap is exactly where the danger lives. So is anyone trying to calm this down? Yes. But they are losing the race against the dredgers. For years, China and the ASEAN group of Southeast Asian nations have been negotiating something called a Code of Conduct, a set of rules to manage behavior in the South China Sea and prevent clashes. The target is to finish it by the end of 2026. The Philippines, which is chairing ASEAN this year, is pushing hard to get it done. But here is the problem. Talking is slow. Building is fast. While diplomats sit in meeting rooms debating wording, the sand keeps flowing. Every new runway, every missile pad, every radar dome changes the facts on the water before any agreement is even signed. By the time the rules arrive, the islands they were meant to limit may already be finished and fortified. You cannot negotiate away an island that already exists. That is the quiet tragedy of the South China Sea right now. The paperwork is moving at the speed of diplomacy. The concrete is moving at the speed of ambition. Let's step back and look at what just happened. In 5 months, China turned a sandbar into one of the largest islands in the South China Sea. Vietnam is racing to build across all 21 of its reefs. The Philippines is extending runways and ports with American support. And a region that millions of people depend on for food, trade, and security is slowly filling up with military hardware. None of these countries wants to be the one that falls behind, so they all keep building. And with every acre of new land, the sea gets a little more crowded, a little more tense, and a little more dangerous. The big question now is simple. Will the Code of Conduct arrive in time to slow this down? Or will the South China Sea keep filling with islands until there is no room left for anyone to back down? Antelope Reef did not exist as real land a year ago. Today, it could become the largest island in these waters. That tells you everything about the direction this region is heading. And in the South China Sea, the side that builds first usually wins first. If this breakdown helped you understand what is really happening in the South China Sea, subscribe to Indo-Pacific Report for more clear, fact-based analysis of the stories shaping Asia's future. Because the next major flashpoint may already be rising out of the water, one island at a time.